Welcome to my CBSE English teacher. Today let's look at the line by line explanation of the final part of the chapter Poets and Pancakes from class 12 English. If you're watching my video for the first time, consider subscribing. You can listen to the explanations of lessons from classes 10, 11 and 12 English. And don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I upload a video. Let's move on to the video now. The great prose writers of the world may not admit it, but my conviction grows stronger day after day that prose writing is not and cannot be true pursuit of a genius. So here the narrator says that he has a conviction. Conviction means strong belief. So he feels that prose writing is not meant for the genius. Genius means the intellectual people. What is prose writing? Prose writing is writing long pieces of essays. So he says that they cannot write long pieces of essays. And he says that the great prose writers of the world may not admit it. And he says that people who write prose will not admit to this belief that prose writing is not for a genius. It is for the patient, persistent, persevering drudge with a heart so shrunken that nothing can break it. So he is saying that it is only for people who are persistent, that means who does the work continuously, persevering, that means they go on bear the pain or whatever, and drudge here means doing any kind of hard or boring work. So only people who are ready to do all these kinds of work may be ready to write long proses. So the narrator also says that people with a shrunken heart, that means without any feeling. Shrunken means that is small. So people without any feelings are also able to write, and nothing can break their will to write long narratives or long prose. And rejection slips don't mean a thing to him. So he says such people can also write even if they are bothered by any kind of rejection. So rejection comes in also, they will continue to write such long prose. He at once sets about making a fresh copy of the long prose piece and sends it to another editor, enclosing postage for the return of the manuscript. So a person who writes such long prose, he definitely needs a lot of patience to write it, and then after writing, what does he do? He makes a fresh copy of it and puts it in an envelope along with a postage stamp also, and sends it to another editor. Now why does he send it to another editor? Maybe to cross check it and find out the mistakes and correct it or whatever. So he puts it in an envelope and sends it to another editor. It was for such people that the Hindu had published a tiny announcement in an insignificant corner of an unimportant page, a short story contest organized by a British periodical by the name The Encounter. So the poet says that it was for such people. Such people means people who have a lot of patience and those who are ready to write long prose. So for such kind of people, the Hindu newspaper published a small announcement. He says that announcement was in an insignificant corner. So it was not on an important page, it was in some page, and it was a very small notification also. And what was that notification? That there was a short story contest which was organized by the British periodical. Periodical is a magazine, and the name of the magazine is The Encounter. So there was a small advertisement of the contest organized by the British periodical named The Encounter in a very small corner of the Hindu newspaper. So it was a short story contest. So people who were interested can or could take part in that contest. Of course, The Encounter wasn't a known commodity among the Gemini literati. So he says that the magazine Encounter was not a known commodity. So this product or this magazine was not known to the literate people of the Gemini studio. So they never knew that there was a magazine called The Encounter. I wanted to get an idea of the periodical before I spent a considerable sum in postage sending a manuscript to England. So the narrator was interested to send a short story or an entry to this magazine. So he said that before he could send this entry, he wanted to know more about the magazine because he did not want to waste a lot of money by sending this manuscript to London. What is a manuscript? Manuscript is nothing but handwritten copy. Okay, so that's called a manuscript. In those days, the British Council Library had an entrance with no long winded signboards and notices to make you feel that you were sneaking into a forbidden area. So he wanted to go to the British Council Library in order to find out the details about this Encounter magazine. So he says in those days this library did not have long signboards and notices telling you that you should be very careful or silence, etc. So such notices and signboards usually make you feel that you're actually entering into a wrong area or a prohibited area. But he says that in those days these libraries did not have such signs and you could enter freely into such places. Sneaking means walking silently inside without anybody's knowledge, and forbidden area means an area that is not allowed for everybody to use. And there were copies of the Encounter lying about in various degrees of freshness, almost untouched by readers. So when he went to the library, he found that the magazine, the Encounter, was lying on the table in various degrees and almost untouched by readers, means nobody had touched those magazines because they never knew about it at all. When I read the editor's name, I heard a bell ringing in my shrunken heart. So he says that he took the magazine and read it, and when he read the editor's name, there was a bell that rung in his mind. That means suddenly he remembered something. So he says that in his small heart he remembered something. It was the poet who had visited the Gemini studios. So remember that there was a visit by a poet and they all were surprised. So this name that was written in the editor's place was the name of that person who had visited the Gemini studios. I felt like I had found a long lost brother, and I sang as I sealed the envelope and wrote out his address. So he was so happy because he could identify that name, because that person was a person who had visited Gemini studios some time ago. So very happily he put in his manuscript inside the envelope and wrote his address on it, because he wanted to send it to London for the short story competition. I felt that he too would be singing the same song at the same time. So he also thought that as soon as that person receives his cover or the envelope, he too would also be singing the same song, because they were happy to know each other or get to know each other once again. Long lost brothers of Indian films discover each other by singing the same song in the first reel and in the final reel of the film. So he says that in most of the Indian films you can see that the young siblings or the friends would be singing one song in the beginning, and now they'll get lost, and after they get lost, after they rejoin, they'll be singing the same song. So what he finally wants to say here is they both will be singing the same song once they identify each other, because they had met in the Gemini studios some time ago. Stephen Spender, and that was his name. So who is Stephen Spender? Stephen Spender is none other than the poet who had visited Gemini studios from London. And years later, when I was out of Gemini studios and I had much time but not much money, anything at a reduced price attracted my attention. So the narrator says that after some years he was out of Gemini studio. That means he was not working for Gemini studios at this time, and he says that he had enough time but not much money. So anything at a reduced price attracted him because he was not having much money. On the footpath in front of the Madras Mount Road post office, there was a pile of brand new books for 50 paise each. So, this Madras Mount Road is a prominent area in the city of Madras in those days. Now, also, it's very prominent, but in those days, that place was very popular for books. You can see books, people selling books on the roadside. So, the narrator also saw a pile of brand new books. That means a lot of books were there and they were all sold for 50 paise each. So one book cost only 50 paise. Actually, they were copies of the same book, an elegant paperback of American origin. So, all the books were the same book, they were copies of the same book, and they all had an elegant paperback cover. Elegant means beautiful looking. And what is paperback? Paperback is nothing but stiff and flexible cover of the books. So, all these books were from America. They were specially low price student edition. So they were low price for students to buy them in connection with the 50th anniversary of the Russian Revolution. So because of the 50th anniversary of the Russian Revolution was on, so that is why there was a reduction in the prices of books so that students can buy them. I paid 50 paise and picked up a copy of the book The God That Failed. So he paid 50 paise and bought one book. And what is the name of the book? The name of the book is The God That Failed. Six eminent men of letters in six separate essays describe their journeys into communism and their disillusioned return. Six eminent men. So eminent means popular and famous. Men of letters means scholars, those who are able to write. So what is there in the book? It is actually, this book contained six separate essays. So and what is described in these essays? Each writer had described their journey into communism, what they understood by communism, and their disillusioned return. What is disillusion? Feeling unhappy or feeling not satisfied. So they all tried to understand what communism is and they were not happy with it and they returned from those ideals that are related to communism. So this is what was described in each of the essays by these six writers. So who are these six men of letters who wrote about communism? They are Andre Gide, Richard Wright, Ignacio Silone, Arthur Koestler, Louis Fisher and Stephen Spender. Stephen Spender, suddenly the book assumed tremendous significance. So as soon as the narrator saw the name Stephen Spender, the book got tremendous significance, means a lot of importance. Why did he get a lot of importance? Why did he feel a lot of important about the book? Because it was written by Stephen Spender, and Stephen Spender is none other than the poet who had visited Gemini Studios. Stephen Spender, the poet who had visited Gemini Studios. So he remembered that this was the same person who had visited Gemini Studios, that is Stephen Spender from London. In a moment, I felt a dark chamber of my mind lit up by a hazy illumination. So as soon as he read the name, he felt that there was a light glowing inside his dark mind. What kind of light? He says it's a hazy illumination. Hazy means cloudy or foggy. Illumination means light. The reaction to Stephen Spender at the Gemini Studios was no longer a mystery. So now he says that the reaction that was given at the Gemini Studios, the reaction of people when Stephen Spender visited the Gemini Studios was no longer a mystery. All these days people were wondering why this poet visited Gemini Studios. So now the narrator Ashokamitran says that it was clear why Stephen Spender had visited Gemini Studios. He says the boss of the Gemini Studios may not have much to do with Spender's poetry, but not with his God that failed. So he says that the boss, that is S.S. Vasan, may not be concerned with Stephen Spender's poetry, but certainly he has some kind of concern to the book, that is The God That Failed, which talks about communism. So I hope you liked today's video. For more interesting videos, Do subscribe to my CBSE English teacher. Like, share, and please give your valuable comments below. Thank you for watching.